And thanks for staying with us here on Breakfast Central. Let's tell you quickly that Zimbabwe's 80-year-old President Emmerson Mnangagwa's government has approved a proposed law that will punish unpatriotic citizens. The step is said to be Mnangagwa's move to silence critics and entrench his reign in the country. Recall that the president promised a law that will punish Zimbabweans who lobby for sanctions against the country soon after winning the disputed 2018 elections.
Information Minister Monica Mnangagwa said that the cabinet has approved the Criminal Law Amendment Bill 2022, targeting those deemed as undermining Zimbabwe's national interest, as presented by Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Minister Ziyambi. Joining us this morning to further talk about this from Harare is the Chairperson of Crisis in Zimbabwe Coalition, Peter Gift Mutasa. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, and Africa, and thank you for inviting me.
Now let's talk about this proposed law. Critics have said that this is part of a sustained attack on freedom of expression by the Zimbabwean ruler who took over power in 2017 following a military coup that toppled longtime ruler Robert Mugabe. What are your thoughts on this? Do you share same sentiment? And what would you say as regards the current position of freedom of expression in Zimbabwe?
Right. So the most important thing is to note that after the 2017 coup, Zimbabwe is now basically a military dictatorship. It has, without announcing, it suspended the constitution. Most, if not all, of our constitutional rights and freedoms have been taken away, especially freedom of expression, association, and freedom of assembly. So people cannot freely talk about the policies and practices of government that are detrimental to the welfare of the state. Journalists are arrested for exposing corruption or electoral fraud, which is actually beneficial for any democratic state. They are arrested, they are put in pre-trial detention. Trade unionists are jailed for striking or for demanding fair working conditions. Religious leaders are not spared either. They are arrested, they are jailed, they are brutalized for speaking truth to power. And civil society organizations faces a ban if the new law, the private voluntary organization law, also comes into law. The opposition political activists are not spared. They are abducted, they are murdered, they are brutalized, they are tortured, simply for holding a different political view and persuasion from that of the establishment. So we have a martial law in place that has not been fully announced, but which we are experiencing and know that it exists, and no one is spared. For Nigerians, we are in a similar situation to that of the military dictatorship of Sani Abacha in the 90s.
That's really deep if you take a look at it. But I mean, for the benefit of our viewers, let's take a look at this law very carefully, Mutasa. First of all, it's been said that Emmerson Mnangagwa is copying or taking this law from that of the United States, which is known as the Logan Law. Now, this law, we hear, criminalizes any negotiation by unauthorized citizens with a foreign government. And if you are copying or emulating a law from the United States, doesn't this spell doom or consequences that will follow suit, especially when it is being applied in a dictatorship rule or regime? What's your thought?
The first point is that it is double standards by the Harare regime, because it projects itself as a pan-Africanist, Africanist and nationalistic government. It projects itself through propaganda that it does not accept American and Western values and norms. So how come it is justifying this law that is draconian law based on American standards? That's the first thing. Is it announcing to the world and to citizens in Zimbabwe that it is now copying the Western standards and norms? Because when we demand liberal constitution,
All right. Whilst we're trying to connect with him, we're of course having a bit of challenges there. We're talking about the fact that Emmerson Mnangagwa has said that he is okayed or he's looking to pass a law to deal with unpatriotic citizens. And we have our guest who's speaking with us in this regard. Are you back with us now? Unfortunately, now he's talking about, I mean, Joe had just asked him about the Logan Act in the United States, and, you know, because he had said that this is a reflection of the Logan Act. Mm-hmm. The unfortunate thing right now is that since 1799, when this was passed, no one has been convicted of the Logan Act. So anyway, we have our guest here who would be talking to us more about this. Please go ahead.
Right. So I was saying the second aspect is that this is being implemented in a dictatorship, a military dictatorship for that matter, where there is no separation of powers. The parliament is submissive to the executive, military junta. The judiciary is captured and submissive to the military junta. And thirdly, the law is not properly defined. Sovereignty, dignity, independence, and national interests, they are quite vague and they've not been fully defined. The regime this will allow the regime to have unfettered reach to silence dissenting voices. So we don't think there is any similarities with the Logan Act in the sense that America is a liberal constitutional democracy. Zimbabwe is a military dictatorship. This law is simply going to be used to silence dissent. They want to introduce a nationalistic, blind patriotism, which is some sort of hear no evil, see no evil, and speak no evil. They know that the many citizens in Zimbabwe and in the diaspora, they are not happy with the way the country is failing. The state is failing to provide human security. Many people are living in danger, and danger that is perpetuated by the state and ruling part elites. Many people are also failing to find economic sustainability and livelihoods. That's why many Zimbabweans are going outside the country. The state is also failing to provide public service. Our hospitals do not have basic painkillers, no equipment. Doctors and nurses, radiographers are getting out. We are having a serious brain drain in this country because they are demotivated. So the state is aware that all of us, many Zimbabweans, are demotivated, are frustrated, and they want to raise dissent, and they want to exercise their constitutional rights to dissent and to raise alternative views and to establish alternative government that is a constitutional democratic government. And this law is going to be used to muzzle dissent and to also jail those who try to raise voices against military dictatorship.
You know, one wonders what the way out is for Zimbabwe and for Africa. Earlier in the year, we also know that President Emmerson Mnangagwa had approved a bill that restricted civil organizations from receiving foreign funding. The United States has also said that unfortunately Zimbabwe is unwilling to improve its relations with the international community. We wonder, what is the way out? What next? It seems that, you know, this is becoming, some people have said that he's becoming a law unto himself. What is the way out for Zimbabweans? How are they dealing with this? And if we are stifling the powers of the fourth realm of government, we're stifling the powers of the civil organizations, what is the way out?
So we are not against patriotism, but we want constructive patriotism or constitutional patriotism that is based on values and norms that are acceptable, that protects the welfare of everyone and the human rights of everyone. There is no one pathway to democratization of Zimbabwe. The ultimate goal must be democratization of Zimbabwe, and this can be done through our internal actions. We must mobilize all Zimbabweans, conscientize all Zimbabweans, and ensure that we form a united front that will demand for constitutionalism. Our constitution is quite progressive in paper and in letter. We need constitutionalism. We need it to be applied fully. So our situation is not different from what was happening in apartheid South Africa, and from what we experienced in colonial Rhodesia when we were under the colonial white minority rule. What worked was the mobilization of Zimbabweans towards one goal. Unfortunately, we are facing a more stronger and a very rich dictatorship that has captured the whole economy and expropriating our natural resources through corruption and through government tenders and pillaging of natural resources. It is using propaganda to divide citizens. We need to unite and form a formidable united front. But we can also not do it alone. We need the international community, especially our African brothers and sisters, and African governance institutions like AU and SADC, not to condone what is happening in Zimbabwe and not to be silent when the Zimbabwean regime is shooting people like it did on 1 August in broad daylight in the capital city, defenseless citizens, when the government is looting massively the national resources of the country, and when half of the population is living in poverty, and over 72% is food insecure, and the majority of Zimbabweans are without jobs and wallowing in poverty. So we need the continental solidarity from African Union citizens and government, and we also need the regional solidarity from SADC governments and its people. But we also need international solidarity from the United Nations. The international law must be fully applied. There should not be impunity. People should not just disappear in Zimbabwe. People should not be just be killed and abducted and tortured, and the international community is silent. So we are a nation that is in trouble. We are citizens that are in trouble, that are severely repressed and under a brutal dictatorship. We are crying out to the world and to Africa.
Well, so many questions being asked there. What is the definition of unpatriotic? If Zimbabwe decides to be a law unto itself, who will hold it accountable? And what really is the hope for freedom and freedom of expression in Zimbabwe? Thank you so much, Peter Gift Mutasa, for joining us.
Thank you. It has been my pleasure, and we call out on all of you to help us. We are in trouble.
No problem. We're here. That's why we're here at News Central, being the voice for Africa. Thank you so much once again.